So this is what that we are going to discuss in the first two sessions. Will be a bit theoretical. So most of the components or most of the terminologies you may not understand, but don't need to worry. All the things that whatever that we have discussed here orally, in the next going sessions, we will be implementing all those components practically. Like we will be keep on reusing them. Hence, you will be getting used to it. So that's how this details that will be going in. Next, coming to the or else like we'll be like once after this theoretical is being done, we will be starting with the practicals. The first thing that we will be doing is the installation of the tool. So first we are going to start with the identity IQ preview. So in this we will be discussing all about identity IQ business purpose, technical overview, functional elements, and implementation strategies. So these two sessions will be a bit shorter, only shorter in length and kind of theoretical. So I don't want to elaborate much of theoretical because it is of no use for you. Mainly how much the knowledge that you gain for practicals, that is more important, because end of the day this is a tool, right? So how much you explore more in the tool, that much knowledge that you can gain. So now, why identity and access management? So as I already told you, like every organization needs identity and access management to manage all the identities or the resources that are working in the organization. Okay, that is the main purpose. So the common business objectives are like security and regulatory compliance. So with the use of the Sailpoint, we have these common business objectives. So security and regulatory compliance, review user access and eliminate unneeded accesses, enforce segregation of duties and other access policies, provision new access in compliance with standards, deactivate access quickly when users leave the organization. So reviewing the user access means in SailPoint, we have a component called as certifications. So that certification helps you to review each and every access, and if any access is needs to be eliminated, that we can remove it from the user's account. Next, enforcing segregation of duties. So this segregation of duties means what duty a person should have, like a developer should have developer accesses, tester should have tester accesses. So if people who are having a developer as well as a tester, so a policy violation should be triggered. So these set of things that we will be considering as a policies in SailPoint. So enforcing the segregation of duties, or SODs we call them as. Next, provision new access in compliance with standards. So whenever a person is getting added into the organization, he will be allocated with some new access, right? So that we will be giving it based upon the standards of the organization. Next, deactivate access quickly whenever users leave the organization. The same way, whenever users leave the organization, all accesses should be removed. So what I was saying is provision new access in compliance with standards. So whenever a person joins a company, he will be allocated with some access. Like you, whenever you have joined your company also, you have allocated with some set of accesses, right? So that's called as a birthright provisioning, we call it as. So like without you request for any access, you have been allocated with a login access, logout access, your company portal accesses. So these are all based upon your company standards. They will be allocating it to you, which is common for every user or every identity who is getting onboarded into the company. Next, deactivating also. So whenever you change the person status from active to inactive, which means the identity is getting terminated or his status will be moved to inactive. All the accesses that you have assigned him in the beginning, so all, everything that will be getting disabled or deleted. Next, business service provision required access quickly, provide manage to the provide control to the business. Here managing the passwords, access change requests that will be coming in. So every time you will be keep on hearing a word called provisioning here. So provisioning means granting of access. Okay, so if you have requested for a particular access and it went for the manager's approval, so once the manager approves the request, we will say like your account has been provisioned. Okay, your access has been granted, like that you can understand. Next, in this managing the password, so every user will be allocating a default password. So we will be assigning a password and they can log in with their own username and password into the SailPoint. Next, access change request. So access change request means a user places a request for an entitlement. So here entitlement means an access. Okay, access, the other term you can consider as a entitlement. So a user places a request for an access. The request goes for the manager or application owner approval. Once the owner approves the request, the user will be getting the access. So that's how you need to understand. Next, IT efficiency, lower IT support call volume, increase the amount of administration automation. So lowering the IT support call volume means like SailPoint has a community server where you can post your queries and get the answers, and any kind of an queries or anywhere that you are struck configuring. So you can just refer that particular community portal and excuse me, and grab the information. So that's how you will be getting in, but currently you will not be able to sign up to that particular portal. But once you join a company and that company has SailPoint license with your credentials, with your company credentials, you will be able to log into that particular portal. So that is one thing, and increase the amount of administration automation. So there are a lot of features that are involved in SailPoint where we can schedule them. So without manual intervention, also the task gets executed and the appropriate results will be obtained. So basically here we are going to look into the components. Okay, so what are all the different components that are available in SailPoint? So here we'll be discussing all the components in brief, like in definition perspective, but all these components we are going to implement them practically. So we have a separate sessions for each and every component, and where we'll be discussing more in detail. But here to make you understand what exactly an object is, what exactly this component does, as a definition point of view, we will be discussing over here. So these are all the components that are present in or available in SailPoint, which are divided into like business need, business model, business data, business applications, and IT infrastructure. Starting with the business need, so we have the access certifications. So certification or an access certification, whatever you call it like. So this particular object helps you, because any component in SailPoint, we term it as an object. Remember, because I keep on saying like object. So you just need to understand every component in SailPoint is termed as an object. Okay. So access certification. So this particular component helps you to review the user access. So every quarterly basis or every annually basis. So by the definition, you can understand periodic access review performed on each and every identity based upon his identity attributes, entitlements, roles, whatever the accesses that is been allocated to him. Considering all those things, we will be performing a review on that user. So while the review is in progress, his manager, who will be the reviewer, so he will be checking in any wanted access being there. If the wanted access being there, he'll be approving it. Any unwanted access being there, that will be revoked, because every access that is being assigned to a particular user is chargeable to the client. Okay, if you are not utilizing it, or if it is not needed for you, but still the client is paying that for your access, right? So that kind of an access can be removed. So that is the purpose of having this access certifications. Next, access request. So this is the place where you will be placing a request for any entitlement or a role in SailPoint, which will be going for the approval process. Next, automated provisioning. So automated provisioning deals with, just like I explained, the birthright provisioning, right? So whenever you join a company, without without you raise a request for any manager for some access, you will be automatically provisioned with some set of accesses like login access, logout access, transportation access, your company payroll access. So these are all things will be automatically provisioned to you without any kind of an approval or without you request for any access. So this is about the automated provisioning. Coming to the password management now. Password management is like you can just set up default password that will be applicable to all the identities, and anytime you can just change it on the identity warehouse. So identity warehouse is a place where all the identities will be stored. So there you can just change any person's password. But defaultly or initially when you are setting an application, if you want to set a password to all the identities, a default or temporary password, you can just do it. And not only here, there will be some kind of an applications, target application that has their own username and password, like an LDAP application. So we can just do a synchronize. So we can sync the LDAP password within Sailpoint password, which what happens is like with the same user ID, you can just use the password which is set it for the Sailpoint. And if that particular user is part of an LDAP, so he has an LDAP account also, it means he can log in with that particular LDAP password and log in into Sailpoint. So that way we can just synchronize these all things that will come under the password management. Next, coming to the policy management. So a policy management followed by a policy model. So both are same. So we will be setting up some segregation of duties. So just in the previous slide, we have seen, right, the segregation of duties. So a developer should have a developer server access, tester should have a testing server access. Both conflicts should not be observed. So we will be setting up so those regulations, those rules, we will be writing it within the policies, and people whoever are not following those rules, they would be captured under the policy violations, and those violations needs to be handled by their respective managers. Either the manager would be revoking their access, or he may allow it for certain duration, because it may be an real time useful case, right? So he may be using for testing purpose, testing a scenario, he may need that access. So that is a genuine case, so he can allow it for some duration. So you need to set a timestamp for 10 days or 15 days, like that you can allow it, or else you can remove that access which has been conflicting. So those all options that you will be seeing under the policy management and policy model. Next, coming to the role model. So roles are like a collection of entitlements. So I told you, right, entitlements are the accesses. So individual entitlements a user can place a request for example, VPN. So your VPN access, your login access. So these are all called as entitlements. So some group of entitlements, if you gather and put it in one object, and that is called as a role. So some of the projects uses roles as their priority, like they implement a RBAC approach. They follow an RBAC approach, like a role-based access control. Some companies or some projects doesn't involve roles at all. They'll just go with an a back process, attribute based access control. So just with the entitlements, they will be sharing their accesses. Where if involve the roles, some bunch of entitlements will be assigned to one particular user with adding one particular role to him. So like that. Next, workflow engine. So workflow engine or workflows generally deals with like a sequence of steps that are designed to perform various activities in SailPoint. Okay, so in the graduation you might have seen like uh, flow charts, start step, decision box step, some logical steps, stop step. So like that, how the design will be going in the same way the workflow designs will be going in. So based upon the usage, based upon the activity that you are performing, so these workflows will be triggered. So for creating an identity, there is a default workflow. For requesting an access in SailPoint, we have a default workflow. So like that. Next, identity warehouse. So identity warehouse is a place where all the identities will be residing in, or they will be getting stored. Next, reporting. So reporting is a place where you can just generate some physical reports in the form of a CSV format or a PDF format files. So those files you can just share it across your client for auditing purposes. Next, risk model. So risk model is a complete optional topic, guys. So in most of the projects, people don't use it. In my 8+ years of career also, I haven't, there is no such project that we have implemented a risk model. But as part of the training, we are just covering this risk model as well to make you aware of how the risk scoring happens in SailPoint. So basically, risk model is like a numerical value that we will be assigning or allocating to each and every identity and each and every application to segregate them. Okay, to differentiate them from one user to other user, we will be adding a numerical values. So these numerical values ranges from 0 to 1000. So between this, we will be assigning like the numbers. It's not like individually we'll open an identity and we'll assign a number. It's not like that. There is a configuration, and SailPoint has an backend algorithms that will calculate and assign these risk score. We'll just do a one-time configurations. So we have objects like roles, risks, certifications, right? We will be giving some percentage weightage to them. So based upon those percentage weightage, SailPoint calculates the numbers and allocates to each and every individual in the organization. Not only the individual, the applications also. So this is for the security purposes to differentiate who has more security threat than compared to the other person, like that. Next, business data. So this involves the user's data. So all the data that is stored in the database. So this involves the user data or the identities data, applications data that we have configured, and the data of all the other objects that we have constructed. Next, integration framework. So we have connectors, APIs, and plugins. So connectors helps you to communicate with the target system and get the data. Okay, so SailPoint directly cannot understand all the applications technologies, right? So as a mediator or as a communicator, we have a connector object in SailPoint, which helps you to communicate to each and every a technology. Like for example, if you want to integrate O365, we have a connector. If you want to integrate a database, we have a JDBC connector. If you want to integrate with an LDAP, we have an LDAP connectors. If you want to integrate with an Active Directory, we have an AD connector. So like that. Excuse me. Next, APIs. So SailPoint has their own APIs or libraries where we can just call them for your custom implementation. So if you want to write any kind of a rules, we can utilize the SailPoint APIs. Next, plugins. So plugins, we will be learning about two important plugins in SailPoint. So this helps for an add-on purpose, which makes our work more easier. So one of the plugin that we will be learning is like integrating Eclipse IDE with SailPoint. So the complete SailPoint data will be synced into Eclipse, and whatever the changes that we do in Eclipse IDE, that will be getting reflected on the SailPoint UI. Next, business applications. So business applications includes the cloud applications, on-premise applications, and some third-party integrations. So these are all the applications that we can just integrate it within SailPoint. So not only the other applications we can integrate, we can also integrate the third-party integrations. I told you, right? Third-party means like so some other IAM tools also we can integrate, like CyberArk, Okta. So these also we can integrate it with SailPoint. So we have such connectors to integrate. Next, we have two important components over here, compliance manager and lifecycle manager. So you can consider like SailPoint is divided into two categories. One is taken care by compliance manager, other one is taken care by the lifecycle manager. So to explain you in brief, compliance manager entirely deals with the configurational part. Okay, auditing, setting the least access across all applications, enforcing the compliance, the preparing some reports, onboarding the applications, all the configurational part will be taken care by compliance manager, and all the testing part or provisioning areas, automated provisioning or manual provisioning, setting up the password, access change requests, any kind of a provisioning related activities or testing related activities that is being taken care by the lifecycle manager. So this is how the two components that you will be seeing. Next, identity IQ technical overview. So I have kept four slides, guys. So with these four slides, you can just understand how the data will be grabbed into SailPoint and how the provisioning will be happening within SailPoint. So where I was, yeah, technical overview. So here, identity IQ process. I just kept the four slides to make you understand how the entire onboarding of an applications or how the provisioning will be happening within SailPoint. So starting with reading of data. So we'll be reading the data from the target system. So you can see here two sections. One is the identity IQ section. The other one is the source applications or the target system. You can understand. So you will be creating an application in SailPoint, and post that you will be running an aggregation task. So when you are configuring an application, you will be giving the entire details of that particular application, like connectivity details and everything. So once you have given them, an aggregation task will be running. So the task is a kind of a batch job that we will be running for almost every configuration. So once we run that configuration, once we run the task, then only our activities will be started. So we have one of such tasks called as an aggregation task. So every application that you onboard, we will be creating an aggregation task and execute it. So once we run the aggregation task, then only the data will be pulled into SailPoint. So the data is now pulled from the target or source application into SailPoint. So once the data is been pulled, the identity attributes, so an identity cube will be getting constructed. So all these such identity cubes are stored in the identity warehouse. An identity cube contains the identity information like identity attributes. So identity attributes means like the user's first name, last name, email address, phone number, manager details. So everything is considered as an identity attribute. So application accounts, what are all the applications accounts that a person have access to? Those details will be displayed. Next, entitlements, whatever the accesses that he's been allocated with. So those will be printed. And all these entitlements will be stored at one place called as the entitlement catalog. So identities will be stored under identity warehouse, I told you, right? Entitlements will be stored under the entitlement catalog. Remember that. So this is how the reading of data will happen. So once we have read the data, we have some information gathered of an identity. Next, the next step, you will be adding the objects, the policies, risks, roles. So you can just create them. So based upon their accesses, you can segregate the duties, setting up the policies. So we can just assign some numerical values to these identities. There comes the risk model. Next, coming to the roles. So roles deals with the, we have the entitlements, right? So we can collect some group of entitlements and configure under one role. So that comes under the roles section. Next, once the business modeling is done, the next section is the governance process. So governance process, now we have all the data. Now I want to review the person's access. Okay, so there comes the certification part. Okay, so here we will be performing the access reviews. Any access is being needs to be approved, it will be approved. If it is to be rejected, it will be rejected. So that is one thing. And also, whenever you are reviewing an access, some accesses will be revoked, right? So you can just carefully see here. So from the identity IQ, if you have revoked the access, that access should also be revoked from the target system as well, deleted from the target system as well. So that's how a sync will be happened. And you can see this refresh. So this refresh and aggregation are the tasks. So aggregation task pulls the data, right? If any changes made to an identity cube, you will be running a refresh identity cube task. So that will update the changes to the identity cube. Okay, revoke is not a task, it's a provisioning activity. So like any kind of an access has been added to an identity or removed from an identity, that will be getting updated in the target system. So that's how you need to understand. Next, identity IQ provisioning process. So user requested change, data change. So finally we are at the provisioning process state where all the things are configured. Now we can request the change, or like a user can request a change, or data change may happen in the target system. So these two things you can understand. So data change happens in the target system, means in the application, in the client application, there is a new identity joined. Okay, so new employee joined a company. First they will be onboarded in the HR system, right? So once they get onboarded to the HR system, the data changes will happen. So that will be pulled into Sailpoint. How the data will be pulled for new identities, we will be running an aggregation again. Same way, when a person requests any change, for example, Sushant is a user already existing in a company. So he wanted a new access. So there comes a user requested change. So that's how this data will be going in. Next, example projects. So we have some components that we will be mandatorily using, and some components will be completely optional. If you just observe here, risk model is completely optional in all the areas whenever you are certifying them or whenever you are provisioning them. So these all configurations, some are mandatory, some are not required also. Next, we have the functional elements. So basically we have three functional elements. So those are tasks, business process, as well as the rules. So you can just consider these are the three main pillars of Sailpoint you can understand, because without you working on this, your Sailpoint activities won't be performed. Okay. So starting with the tasks and business process. So all the data stored in the identity IQ as objects, as I told from the beginning. So tasks are kind of a batch jobs that act on these objects. Tasks typically process the data on schedule. Okay, so either you run the task then and there, or else you can just schedule them. So whenever you start with creating an application, you will be running an aggregation task. Whenever you make any changes to an identity, we'll be running a refresh task. Whenever you create any kind of a policies, the rules that you set it, when you run it, you will be running a what policy violation check active policies task. For risk model, if you configure and that needs to be calculated by Sailpoint, you will be running a refresh risk scores task. So like that, for every object, we have a task that needs to be executed. That's how. Next, business process. So business process act on these objects in response to the events or user requests. So business process typically interact with the user. Okay, so business process would be like the sequence of steps that are developed to perform various activities. So you should start from here, and next you should send a notification. Next, an access provisioning should happen. Next, a ticket needs to be raised for in service now. So these are all the activities that you will be integrated in a business process, all the steps. And you can see all the objects that are rotating around an identity IQ, you can understand, right? So task is an object, roles is an object, business process is an object, entitlement catalog which stores the entitlements, so that is an object. So like that you can understand all these components in SailPoint, we term them like an object. So this is the example task and business process. In the previous technical specifications diagram is there, right? So that's what is being kept here. Aggregation and the refresh are the tasks. Provisioning is kind of a business process. Either you approve it, allow it, or revoke it. Both the cases. So this is a task. Many standard tasks are pre-configured. Many task templates are provided. So implementation team responsibility is like to configure the task, create a task, develop the tasks to a specific environment, and schedule them, execute them. Those all the activities. Administrator, system administrator, or a support people, what they'll be doing, they'll be monitoring the task. They are responsible to monitor the task, how much time it is taking to complete it. Because in your training module or in your practice, there will be very less applications and very less records. So task will be immediately completed. Whereas if you have in around 30, 40,000 thousand of records are there, then it will be taking more time to complete the task. So that also you can consider. That's all. So these are all the task templates that are available, and these are the tasks that we can create it within SailPoint. Already existing tasks and the task templates that we use to create a new task. Next. So these are some default tasks that helps for the maintenance purpose that will be or that are already being scheduled. Okay, so one task will be running every 5 minutes, and one task, so the other three tasks will be running on a daily basis. So daily basis means whenever you just logged in into SailPoint, immediately those tasks will be running or executed in the background. So every day once the task gets executed, and every 5 minutes when maintenance task will be executed, it will be checking any kind of a pending items that have been there to be executed. And though they are being already default schedule, it's not meant like you don't need to execute it. If you want a result immediately, you can just execute it whenever that you want it. But these are the default tasks that are provided directly by SailPoint and are being scheduled also. That is what I'm saying. Next is the business process. So this is how a business process UI screen looks like. The start step, all the decision boxes, transition step, the logical steps, and finally at the end you will also see a stop step also. So a sequence of steps to perform work triggered by system events or a user request. So whenever a user places a request, what are the next sequence of actions that will be performed that have been decided over the workflow. So standard business process are predefined in Identity IQ. Implementation team responsibilities is to configure standard business process and can develop the business process specific to the environment. So in our project, will be learning about the default workflows, and also we will be creating a custom workflow as well at the end of the training. So that would be our last session where we'll be creating an entirely custom workflow entire design that we'll be doing it, and we'll also test the scenario. Next, incorporating the business logic. There comes the rules. So SailPoint understands the Bean Shell scripting rules. Okay, so Bean Shell scripting is like syntactically it will be similar to Java programming. That is the reason I recommend everyone who wanted to become like a SailPoint developers. It's mandatory for them to learn the core Java skills only for the implementer role. And also that also depends upon from project to project. It may vary. Okay, some projects requires a core developers for the development part, and some projects require only the UI level changes, because a team, there will be a wide number of members in a team, right? Some people will be handling some objects like that. So snippets of user code written to inject the business logic. So common users prepare data for aggregation, customize data during aggregation, define unique business policies, control certification behavior, provide values for drop-down menus, creating some passwords for a default password for the identities, provide application provisioning logic, and many more. Okay. Next, rule hooks provided throughout the identity IQ. So this is called as a hook. So this is one of the hook that is present in the certifications. If you want to exclude some identities from being certified, we'll be using this exclusion rule. Okay, remember that. And when you click on this particular small button over here, right? So if you click on it, it will open an editor where you will be writing your piece of code. Okay, the syntactical code that you will be using it. So with how the Bean Shell script that you will be creating with using Identity IQ rule editor, you can create it in IDE, import the XML file. So this is how you can, all the ways that you can utilize to write the program. Finally, implementation. Where do you start? Basically, there are three steps: getting compliant, getting all the requirements, setting up the proper data, gathering the data, a requirement doc from the client, putting all into the application definition, and configuring the application. Next, building foundation, where you will be defining the policies, risk model, certification items, defining the approvals, roles, all these areas that you will be configuring. Finally, managing the ongoing changes. So monitoring the activities, monitoring the task runs, monitoring the access reviews, requests that are happening, removals that are happening. So everything will be monitored. And the cell neutral provisioning. So these are all the activities that we can perform within SailPoint: giving new employee access, giving temporary access to the contractor, reviewing the access, approving role change, remediate policy violations. So these are all happens. So with the fulfillment process, these are all the fulfillment process within SailPoint. And these are the IT resources from which the data can be grabbed and pushed back into the target system. And here in the email, automated provisioning, and paper process. So these three things will be handled by one component, and that is called as a SailPoint provisioning engine. This is how SailPoint provisioning engine. So it's also a backend hardware component, you can understand, which SailPoint deals with performing various activities. Next, summary of all the topics that we have discussed today includes Identity IQ purpose and components, business friendly access governance and provisioning, what is a compliance manager, what is a lifecycle manager, all the components that are involved in SailPoint, what is a policy, roles, risk model. So everything that we have taught here. Next, technical overview, we learned about the 4-step diagram, right, that involves the governance process and provisioning process. Next, we have common concepts like tasks, workflows, and rules. So these are all the functional elements that we are using in SailPoint. Finally, we had ended up with a 3-step getting started process within SailPoint. So these are the topics that we have learned for today.